Yo, what's going on, folks? Good evening, good evening. Welcome. Happy Sunday. Welcome to Bible study. If it's your first time here, welcome. My name is Phillip G. And if you are returning, welcome back to weekly Bible study. Thank you so much for joining with us this evening, especially if it's your first time here. So as always, if it's your first time here, please, consider giving us a like, comment, or subscribe. If you're regulars, you already know what the deal is. Drop us a like, comment, subscribe to the channel, and all that type of YouTube stuff that I'm supposed to say at the beginning of the videos. But if it's your first time here, weekly Bible study. Here at Weekly Bible Study, we meet every Sunday, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, and we walk through the scriptures together. And weekly Bible study is built off of the scriptures in Matthew 6:33, where the Bible tells us to seek ye first, tells us to seek first the kingdom of the Father and his righteousness, and all things shall be added unto us. And so weekly Bible study is our opportunity to do just that, to see, seek, and serve the kingdom of the Father. And so here at Weekly Bible Study, we're continuing to learn and grow. We're a community where we're learning and growing, and we reserve the right to get better and continue growing. All right. So, hey, things are going to change over time. We're going to get new revelation from the Father, new revelation from the Ruach, and we're going to continue to evolve, And so if you're watching these things, years from now, which is crazy to think about, but if you're watching this Bible study years from now, this is 2025, then hey, maybe some of these things have changed. Some of the revelation has deepened, the depth has increased, and that's the goal here, to continue growing in our relationship with the Father. And as we walk through tonight, as we walk through the teaching or the study, if you have any questions, please feel free to throw those questions in the comments. I look over in the comments periodically and do my best to try to answer questions. And if you like the content, please feel free to share with those around you if you feel like it'll be beneficial. All right. So and thank you guys for joining. I don't take it lightly that you all come and walk through this with us. The Father gave me an instruction to do this, and my goal is to be obedient and to be faithful. And as it was said of David, David served his generation well. My desire, my prayer often is that I serve my generation well, and my prayer for you all as well is that you serve your generation well with the assignment that the Father has given you. And so thank you for joining in, and thank you for being obedient to being here. And so thank you. Good evening. I'm gonna have to say Auntie Bernice because I can't call her by her first name. This one. We're not gonna talk about that tonight. And then welcome. Thank you for joining, Auntie Bernice. Thank you for joining, Bridget. First time. Thanks so much for tapping in with us. All right. So I'm going to pray for us real quick, and then we're going to jump into the study tonight. Let's pray. So, Father, we thank you for this opportunity to gather together again, Father. We thank you for the opportunity to say yes to you and to see what the fruit of what saying yes to you looks like, Father. I pray that your word will go forth unhindered and unchecked tonight, Father, without from any outside force. I pray, Father, that you would increase and that I would decrease, that it would be all of you and none of me. I pray that this word would flow directly from your throne into the hearts of your people, Father. And I pray ultimately, Father, that you get the glory from everything that is said here tonight, everything that is done here this evening. Father, I pray that you would set us ablaze for you again and for the things of you, and that you would give us a heart. You would remove the hardness from our heart, and you would give us a heart of flesh, a heart that desires to be in right standing with you, to walk with you, and ultimately to see you here, see your kingdom come, see your will be done here on earth as it has already been done in heaven. We thank you for this opportunity to learn about your word. I pray that as you soften our hearts, Father, that the word that goes forth as seed tonight will fall on good ground in the hearts of your people and all of our hearts, Father, and it will spring forth and produce a harvest in our lives, 30, 60, and 100-fold. And I pray, Father, that as your word says, that the signs and wonders will follow the word as it goes forth. In your son Yahushua's name we pray. These are many of the blessings. Amen. All right. Okay, so where am I? Oh, okay, announcements. Hopefully, can everybody hear me and everything okay? Let me know if you can't. So the announcements for tonight. For those that joined in on the 90-day challenge, there's only one more day left. So tomorrow is the final day. I'm going to go ahead and say congratulations to you. for going ahead and finishing the challenge. And for those who didn't know, we started a 90-day challenge on January 1st, where we read the entire Bible in 90 days from Genesis to Revelation. And we did that because the Father challenged us to do that. And so if you took that challenge, thank you again. We see Victor has been an overachiever. No, I'm just joking. I'm messing with it. But Victor has finished his reading. So thank you so much, Vic, for joining in and doing that. But yeah, we finished it up, and now you're gonna have to figure out like what to do with all this time. I encourage you to keep reading and keep studying. And if you want to read through the Bible again in another 90 days, or if you want to jump on the 90-day train starting April 1st, feel free to do that. I don't think I'm going to be reading the Bible in 90 days starting April 1st, but I never put anything past the Father. My goal is to be obedient. So yeah, for all those that did that, congratulations in advance. All right. And so we're going to continue tonight with our teaching, our study series that we're in, where we're walking through the Bible chapter by chapter, and it's called From Creation to Revelation, from creation to revelation. And so we've been walking through the Bible chapter by chapter, book by book, as the Father instructed us, and we're going to do that this year, some way, somehow. At some point, we will begin to do Bible study more frequently. I don't know what that looks like just yet, but I will let you know as soon as I know, as I have more insight into that. And so tonight, last week we started the book of Numbers, and we looked at Numbers chapters 1 through 12. If you want to catch that, you can go look at Numbers chapter 1 on my page. But tonight we're going to be looking at Numbers part 2. We've broken it down into 3 weeks. So Numbers part 2, week number 2, chapters 13 through 24. So tonight we're looking at Numbers chapters 13 through 24. There's a lot of information here. So I do want to go ahead and jump in, but I want us all to be on the same page. So I'm going to go back and kind of give our overview of the book of Numbers. So the book of Numbers is a continuation of the writings of Moses. We looked at that. We looked at the writings of Moses through Genesis, Exodus, and then Leviticus. All right. So now we're in the book of Numbers, which is a continuation of Moses' writing. In Numbers, as you kind of study this out, they say that the book of Numbers, the title, the book of Numbers, comes from the fact that there were multiple census that were taken throughout the book. That Moses was instructed by the Father to count the number of the children of Israel throughout the book, and even count the number of different segments of the children of Israel throughout the book. And the Father was using that to kind of show the strength of the nation, also put people in kind of in their array for different things like war and for their Levitical charges and different things like that. And so really the book of Numbers talks about the wilderness season, the children of Israel in their wilderness season. We saw last week, and I don't want to spend too much time here, but we saw last week in Numbers chapter 1, where they're entering the second year since their exodus from Egypt. And now they're entering that second half. So they're entering the second year and into the 40th year, which we'll look at tonight. But this is their wilderness season. They're moving from their place of bondage, right outside their place of bondage, Egypt and Mount Sinai. They're moving from there into or closer towards the promised land. And Numbers is a book, a compilation of that journey. All right. So Numbers is a book of a compilation of their journey throughout the wilderness. All right. But even as we look through their journey, we see that the Father remains faithful through their disobedience, through their unbelief, and through many other things that we'll talk about tonight, that the Father is continuing to be faithful. And so I want that to stick out for us as we look through this book, that even though the children of Israel were who they were, the Father remained faithful to them and to his promises, not only to their ancestors, but also to them, the promises that he had made to them directly. So let's jump into Numbers chapter 13. So we're going to start hot, okay? Numbers chapter 13 and 14 and 15. I think we almost going to read most of the chapters. So we're going to come in a little hot. So stick around with me. I'm going to do my best. All right, so let's go. The Ruach, the Holy Spirit is helping us, so we good. All right, Numbers chapter 13. We're going to start in verse 1. I'm going to read verses 1 through 3. And for those that are new here, I read the King James Version. All right. And so the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Send thou men that they may search the land of Canaan, which I give unto the children of Israel. Of every tribe of their fathers shall ye send a man, everyone a ruler among them. And Moses, by the commandment of the Lord, sent them from the wilderness of Paran, which is where they were living, all those men, heads of the children of Israel. And so This chapter begins with Moses receiving an instruction from the Father to send men to spy out the land of Canaan. All right. And so the land that they are going to look at, the land that they're going to gather intel about, is actually the promised land, the land that he has promised to give to them as the seed of Abraham through the promise and the covenant that he made with their father Abraham, or with their that the father made with Abraham over in Genesis chapters 12 and then in chapter 15 as well. And so Moses chooses one man from each one of these tribes, the children of Israel, to go out and spy the land of Canaan. And so these men, the text stated that these men were the heads of their tribes at this time. And so they were also named like princes. They could be called princes sometimes throughout the text. And so as we move into Numbers chapter 13, verse 17, as we move into verse 17, the word says this, the text says this: and Moses sent them out to spy out the land of Canaan and said unto them, get ye up this way southward up into the mountain. And now he's giving them their instructions. He's giving their directives, the things that they are tasked with bringing back from this project. Okay, go and see the land, what it is, and the people that dwelleth therein, whether they be strong or weak, few or many, and what the land is that they dwell in, whether it be good or bad, and what cities they be that they dwell in, whether in tents or in strongholds, and what the land is, whether it be fat or lean, whether there be wood therein or not, and be ye of good courage. I want y'all to remember that. And be ye of good courage, and bring of the fruit of the land. The time of the first ripe grapes. All right. And so Moses sends these spies into this new land to search it out. This is a land that they are supposed to inherit. This is the promise that the Father has given them. And they receive instructions from Moses. And we're going to look at those a little more closely. Number one was to see the land. See the land. This is important. Faith is seen. And so we often have to, a component of faith is seen. And so we often have to see ourselves free from the thing, or see ourselves in the different season before we're able to attain that season. And so the first thing that Moses tells them is to see the land. Go and put your eyes on the promise that the Father has given you. And so whether that be go see the house, whether that be go see the car, whether that be go see that business, or whatever it is, whatever your promise is, that he's telling them first and foremost, even though you're in a wilderness season, fix your eyes, go see that promise that the Father has given you, what it is. So go learn about it, go see how it is. Then number two, see what people already dwell there. Now take an inventory of the civilizations that are living there, the nations that are living there within this land. Are they strong or are they weak? Are they a lot of them? Are they few or are they many? After you see the people, I want you to see the land that they dwell in. So go and check out the topography. Check out whether the land is plentiful, whether the dirt is good, the soil is good, all those types of things. See whether the land is good or bad. See what types of cities they live in. Are they advanced civilization? Do they have walls around their cities, or do they just live out in tents? Do they live in strongholds? That's what strongholds means, like a walled city. Do they live in those types of cities, or do they live in tents? What the land is it fat? Is it fertile? Is the soil fertile? Is it not fertile? Is it lean? Are there woods there? Are there no trees there? Is it desert? All those types of things. And then lastly, bring back some of the fruit from the land. And that's why it tells us that the grapes were starting to ripen, because they brought grapes back from there. All right. And so another thing that we must talk about here, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but another thing that I feel is important to discuss here, I feel led by the Spirit, or when I was studying, this is important to discuss, is that we must talk about how, as spies, the children of Israel had to look like the people in the land that they were going to spy out. Hear me, hear me. If you are a spy and you are sent into a land, but you're not able to blend in to that land, you're not going to be effective as a spy. You look weird. You look out of place. You look different. If you are, let's say, Asian, and you show up in my neighborhood where I grew up, It's strange. You're a bad spy. People think that you're a spy. People expect that you're a spy. You know what I mean? And so the spies, and so the children of Israel, the spies, and those descendants of Canaan that lived in the land, they must have looked similar. They must have had similar like complexions and similar kind of features and different things like that. And the reason why this is important is because we see here that Canaan is a descendant of Ham, if we go back to Genesis chapter 10. And the children of Israel are descendants of Shem, if we go back to Genesis chapter 10. And so what we are seeing here is the scripture continue, the prophecy that we saw over in Genesis continuing to play out throughout the text. And I want to make sure that we are keeping that continuity, because the father, it wasn't the father, it was Noah. Yeah, Noah prophesied over Canaan that he was going to serve the children of Shem. And so we see here that the father is promising the children of Shem that he's going to give the land of Canaan to them. And what? They're going to destroy the children of Shem. Israelites are going to destroy the children of Canaan, and then those that are left will serve them. So we see the prophecy playing out here. I want you to believe that the Bible is true. The Bible is confirming itself. The Bible is living, it's alive, and these things aren't just stories. It's not just something that's made up. It's actually happened, and every word that was said was intentional and coming to pass. All right, let me not stay there too long. And so do with that what you will as you study. And so as we move down into Numbers to verse chapter 13, verse 25, and we look through 25 through 33, now what we see here is the children of Israel, the spies, coming back and giving a report to Moses and Aaron and the entire congregation of the children of Israel. They have been in the land for 40 days. So 40 days within the text, as in the scriptures, you look throughout, the number 40 often signified a period of testing, a period of just stretching, a period of growth, a period of trials, and different things like that. And so we see, as we look a little deeper with understanding what that number 40 means, the same Moses was on the mount for 40 days, and the children of Israel were tested, and they failed that test when they worshiped the golden calf before the 40 days was up. We see in the Gospels that Yahusha, the Mashiach, he was tested after being in the wilderness and fasting for 40 days, et cetera, et cetera. All right. And so let's read here. I'm getting ahead of myself. And so verse 25 says, and they returned from searching of the land for 40 days. And they went and came to Moses and to Aaron and to all the congregation of the children of Israel unto the wilderness of Paran, to Kadesh. And they brought back word unto them and unto all the congregation, and they showed them the fruit of the land. And they told him and said, we came unto the land where you sent us, and surely it flowed with milk and honey. So they say, hey, it's just like they told us it was going to be. And this is the fruit of it. Nevertheless, the people be strong that dwell in the land. The cities are walled and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak there. So Anak was a giant. So they saw children of giants there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the south. The Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites dwell in the mountains. And the Canaanites dwell by the sea and by the coast of Jordan. And Caleb stilled the people before Moses. So they have 12 spies, and it says that Caleb spoke up. Now they're all giving this negative report, and Caleb speaks up and he says this. He stilled the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it. But the men that had went up with him said they won't be able to go against the people, for they are stronger than them. And they brought up an evil report of the land, which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, the land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof. And all the people that we saw there are men of great stature. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight. They were in their own sight as grasshoppers. And so we were in their sight. And so when the spies return and they give this report, it started out pretty good. They're like, man, just everything was pretty much as you said, like the land flows with milk and honey. It's a good land. And look at how good the fruit is and all of that. And then they shifted their focus from the land to the people that were dwelling in the land. Catch this, but those people weren't going to be dwelling there when the father put them there. So they shifted their focus to something that was going to change. Let's keep that going for a second. And then he told them that, hey, no, those people, that the people there, they're too strong for them to fight. I want to say us. They're too strong for us to fight. The cities are too walled or too strong for us to go in and battle against them. And then it goes on to say that the giants that were there, the people that were there, saw them as grasshoppers. I have a question. If you are a spy and people found out that you were a spy, you were in a place where you aren't supposed to be, you're supposed to be there secretly, you're a spy, and the people found out and they even went as far as to say or to think amongst themselves, like, these spies look like grasshoppers. Wouldn't you be a terrible spy? Well, let's think about this naturally. Like, you'll be a pretty bad spy. It's pretty like that's terrible. So we see here that they are again projecting or beginning to project their thoughts among themselves, their mindset among themselves onto these people who didn't see them, who didn't know who they were, who didn't know that they were in the land checking things out. And this is important because often we talk ourselves out of the next season. So often we end up leaving ourselves or committing ourselves to the wilderness because we don't want to. We say that the people in the promised land think things about us that they don't even know about us because we ain't even there. They don't even know that you exist, and you think that they have that opinion of you. Okay, I don't want to say that. And so, even though the Father had given them this beautiful promise, they determined along the way that they weren't really able to receive it. My question there that came up when I was studying is this: if they didn't even believe that they were actually able to receive the promise that the Father was giving them, why even walk through? Why are they even walking through the wilderness? What is their motivation for continuing to move forward? This is why they want to go back so often, because they don't even believe that they can receive it. My question to you is this: do we even really believe the promises of the Father? Do we even really believe that He heals you? Do we really even believe that your latter shall be greater? Do we really even believe that He restores the years that the cankerworm, the locust, and the palmer worm have eaten? Do we really believe that that you will not be forsaken nor begging bread? Do we really believe that? And if you don't, why are you? What are you doing? Why are we doing this? And so Caleb stands up in front of all these people. He's the only one. The children of Israel didn't see the land. Moses and Aaron didn't see the land. All the other spies, they talking bad about the land. Caleb stands up and he says this: no, we need to go and get it now. I'm paraphrasing, but we need to go and get it now because we are well able to take them. Caleb was the only one that had the mindset that the Father has given me this thing. And if the Father has given me this promise, that means that I have already won the promise. It don't matter who over there. I don't care what they say. I don't care what they got. I don't care what they look like. Because they ain't me and they ain't got my promise. That is what it is. And so Caleb stands up. But then the naysayers push back, say, no, 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 wait, hold on, everybody. We hear what Caleb's saying, but remember the giants. They start reminding everybody of all the negative things that are in the land. And so my question to you is this, and this is the title of Bible study tonight: are you a grasshopper? But it's the second part. Are you a grasshopper in your own sight? Because that was the only thing that mattered, what they saw of themselves when they looked in the mirror. They saw that they were grasshoppers. And so they imagined that everyone else saw them as grasshoppers. It didn't matter that everyone else was afraid of them. Let's keep that in mind because these people are hearing that the Father has taken forcefully these children of Israel out of Egypt, have killed Pharaoh and his army in the sea, and now that is spreading amongst all these non-believing nations. But then they still see themselves as grasshoppers when all the other nations are afraid of them. All right, let me finish this chapter. Okay. The question I have to finish this chapter is this. What have you told yourself? I'm talking to myself too. I'm not fussing at y'all. I'm talking to myself too. What have you told yourself about yourself from the perspective of another person or situation? Let me ask you again. What have you told yourself about yourself from the perspective of another person or situation? That you said they probably think this of me. Did they say that? Do they know you? How can they think something of you? What have you told yourself? And I don't know the answer to your question. What have you told yourself about yourself from the perspective of another person or situation? And I'm guilty of this. I'm not just talking. I hear this. I get this all week. So I'm getting this the whole week as I study and whatnot. But I walked through this process myself when I stopped working and being obedient to the Father. And the reason I didn't tell people is because I said they think I'm crazy. Well, they don't even know. I thought I was crazy. They don't think it's gonna work. I didn't think it was gonna work. They didn't know anything. They didn't know what was going on in my life, nor did many of them care. I thought these things, and I put my belief in what I told myself. I put that as truth for them towards me, when they had no insight into that. And what does that do? What do we see it happen here in the children of Israel? It delays or even destroys your opportunity to enter into the promise. Oftentimes, not because of the Father. Oftentimes, it's because we aren't able to identify that we've done it quick enough. So it's been 15 years, 20 years, and now we're just realizing that we put on ourselves something. We put a title on ourselves that kept us out of our next promise, our next season. We put that title on ourselves, and it's 15 years later, and now it's the timing's just wrong. So I'm trying. Hopefully, we can catch it quicker. Okay. Hopefully, we can catch it quicker. And when we get into seasons like that, listen, we're under the blood of the Mashiach, under the blood of the Messiah. And so what we do is now we're able to repent for those things. We're able to turn and say, Father, cleanse me, help me, renew my mind. This is why renewal of the mind is so important. I am still in chapter 13. Help me. All right. So the renewal of the mind is so important, and so that we can shift and we can make these pivots and we can say, okay, I identify quicker that I did this thing. Now let me pivot and repent and go the other way and let me get into the flow a little quicker. All right, so let's move into chapter 14. So as we start chapter 14, we see that the children of Israel have decided to accept the negative report from the spies, and reject the report that Caleb has in the process. And so a lot of times people get hung up with, I'm paraphrasing here, but people get hung up with the fact of like, well, they didn't say that they rejected Caleb. Listen, a lot of times we don't have to say explicit words. Our actions speak for us. So when they said, it says this in verse 1, and the children lifted up their voice and cried, and all the people wept that night. They're crying. And all the children murmured against Moses and against Aaron, and the whole congregation said unto them, with God, that we had died in the land of Egypt, or God, that we had died in this wilderness. Wherefore hath the Lord brought us unto this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should be a prey? Were it not better for us to return into Egypt? And they said one to another, let us make a captain and let us return into Egypt. So what they were saying is, we don't want the promise. We want bondage. Because some people who didn't even see them, They saw themselves as grasshoppers, and they put themselves, they gave themselves a desire to go back to bondage. Them people didn't even know who they was over there. Let me calm. Come on, Phillip. Okay. And so, anyway, the children of Israel have chosen to accept the negative spies report. They think that this place is too big, that we don't need to be, they don't need to be there, that they don't want to do all that work and all that stuff, whatever the reason was. And they began to complain. They began to speak against Moses, and they began to say, like, it was better for them that they had died in slavery than to be free in the possibilities of the promises of the Father. And I don't know if you've ever told yourself that, but that's something you have to talk to yourself about. All right. And so they even decided that they didn't want to follow the Father anymore. They said, we're going to just get us a new leader and we're going to go back to Egypt. We don't even want to follow the Father no more. We want to follow his leader because some spies, you didn't even see this yourself. Somebody else told you what they was lying. Somebody else told you that it was some giants over there. And you was like, oh man, I'm gonna just go back to bondage. Anyway, let me get off that. That whole going back to bondage thing is wild to me. And I have this conversation with myself at least twice a week at this point. All right, so let's pick up in verse 5. And then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the children of Israel, and Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, which were of them that searched the land, they tore their clothes, and they spake unto all the company of the children of Israel, saying, the land which we passed through is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord delight in us, then he will bring us into this land and give it to us. A land floweth with milk and honey. Only rebel not ye against the Lord, neither fear ye the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their defense is departed from them. So they saying like they don't even have nobody defending them. We got the God of gods, the King of kings, the Lord of lords. We got we got Yahuwah fighting for us. They ain't got nobody defending them. And the Lord is with us. Fear them not. But all the congregation bade stone them with stones. And the glory of the Lord appeared in the tabernacle of the congregation before all the children of Israel. So they're complaining, they're murmuring, they're upset and all this. And then Joshua, this time, Joshua and Caleb, they stand up and say, no, we can do this. Like the Father is with us. The Father has chosen us. The Father will give us this thing if he delights in us. They didn't like that answer, the children of Israel. So they decided to kill them by what is it called? Pummeling? Yes, pummeling them with stones. They children of Israel decide they're going to throw stones at Moses, Aaron, Joshua and Caleb, the people who had a good report, the people who were actually listening and speaking the Father's word, they were going to stone them because they wanted to go back to Egypt. Because some negative spies told them that the land was good, but it had a few people in it. So the instruction that he gave them and the instruction that I give us is this: do not rebel against the Father. That's what verse 9 says. Only rebel not. And when they picked up those stones, they rebelled. And so Moses goes into the presence of the Father. And he intercedes on their behalf because the Father is upset. All right. And I'm not going to read the verses there, but as we begin to see in verse 11 through 19, we see that Moses is having a conversation with the Father, very similar to the conversation that was had on Mount Sinai after the golden calf incident. When they worshiped the golden calf, and Moses is asking the Father to pardon the iniquity of the people, because the Father at this point said, hey, get out the way, Moses, I'm finna kill him. I'm finna kill them all. And so Moses is reminding him, say, hey, don't kill them. Think this is the type of leader that you need. Moses is saying, hey, don't kill them, because if you kill them, then all the Egyptians and all the nations will speak against you and say that you didn't have the ability to actually take care of your children. And they're going to say that you beat them, you killed them because you were not actually able to bring them into the land that you promised them, that you weren't a man of your word. You weren't a God, not a man. You weren't a God, a Yahuwah of your word. And so when Moses reminds him of this in his anger, that the Father, essentially what Moses is doing is showing the Father and reminding the Father that if he did those things, it would make him a liar. Now, he didn't say those words. This is me Summarizing, essentially what Moses is saying to the father is, hey, if you do this, you won't be fulfilling your word. That would make you a liar, and you can't lie. And so, because of Moses' intercession, we see in verse 20 that the Father pardons all the people's iniquity. But this doesn't mean that there are no consequences. And this, in my opinion, is something that we miss tremendously these days. Yes, there's repentance, there's grace, there's mercy, there is a pardoning, but there's still consequences. Okay. And so the consequences were this: all the people who complained and murmured were not allowed to enter into the promised land. And they delayed their journey by 40 years because that whole generation that complained and murmured had to die in the wilderness. So they were not able to see the promised land. And eventually we see that only people that were able to see the promised land from that generation were Joshua and Caleb, because they didn't complain. They actually spoke the Father's will over the people and tried to encourage the people to say yes. But everybody else complained. So, in true fashion, how most of us usually do, what do they do next? Moses tells them what their punishment is, that they're going to die and that they're not going to be able to go to the promised land. And they're like, "Oh my goodness, no, this is no. Let's not do this. Let's shift. We can actually go back and we'll go up and we'll take the land." So now the people get they get a coalition together and they decide they're going to go take the land. Well, Moses tells them like, "Hey, don't go over there because the Father's not with you. The folks gonna kill you." Well, they went up there. The folks killed them. So similar, typically how that's typical of us, and we get in a situation like, "Oh man, I didn't obey. Let me go obey real quick." Well, the cloud had moved, the cloud had lifted, and they were no longer under the protection of the Father simply because they had complained, they had murmured, and they had believed the wrong report. And so I don't know what report you believed. I don't know what things you complained about. I don't know what things you murmured about. But I will say this: we are much more like the children of Israel than we care to admit. All right, let's move into chapter 15. And so as we move into chapter 15, it starts with Moses giving the children instruction for how to handle offerings once they enter into the promised land. So Moses is speaking into the entire nation of Israel here. But the reality is that those that were above a certain age weren't going to enter into the promised land, but he's still giving instruction through the Father for the entirety of the nation, because these leaders, these families and whatnot, they were still tasked with the responsibility of teaching the children throughout the generations. So every person was supposed to be taught in their own home and then reinforced with the things from the larger nation perspective with Moses and Levites and all that stuff, and Aaron. And so Moses is giving them these instructions. The fathers continuing to give them these instructions so that they will become a way of life and a way of their culture, so that when they enter into the promised lands, these things will begin to be second nature. And so he begins to start that. He starts that or shows us a little bit of that in Numbers chapter 15, where it talks about the requirement for a sacrificial offering. We're not going to read that because I'm a little bit behind on time. And so let's move down into, okay, yeah, let's move down into Numbers 15, verse 15, all right, 15 and 16. And so he's giving them the instructions that if they brought an offering, that there were some things that they were supposed to bring with them. We looked at burnt offerings and and sin offerings and guilt offerings and all that over in Leviticus. But here the Father is saying, hey, when you bring a burnt offering, I also want you to bring this. I also want you to bring a 10th deal of flour mingled with a fourth part of a hin of oil. I don't know what that means exactly, but that's what he wanted. All right. And so as we get down to verse 15, it says, "This one ordinance shall be for you, both for you of the congregation, and also for the stranger that sojourneth with you, an ordinance forever in your generations. And as ye are, so shall the stranger be before the Father, the Lord. One law and one manner shall be for you, and for the stranger that sojourneth with you." So here we have the Father through Moses clearly stating that forever in the generations, that if there were strangers that had chosen to dwell among the congregation of the children of Israel, that they should be under this ordinance and law as well. And so while all ordinances and laws from the Father didn't have this requirement, many of them often did. And so today, as believers, even if you do not identify as being of Hebrew descent, of the lineage of Israel, then you would still be, if you don't identify with that, then you would be considered a stranger dwelling in the land and would be grafted into the promises and ordinances. This is important because we have been taught that, taught, Taught. Is that just me being Southern saying that wrong? But we have been instructed often by the belief system of the time and the religious leaders of the time that we shouldn't keep the ordinances of the Hebrews, that we shouldn't keep the things of the Old Testament, that all of those things are passed away. And I'm just going to be honest with you, that's just not true. And we'll talk about that, and I'll continue bringing that out as we walk through the text and walk through the entirety of the Bible. But there are things that are still required, and even if they're not required, are good things to have instituted or implemented in our lives, because we are dwelling, if you're a believer, we should be the stranger dwelling in the land that the Hebrews were living in, and then grafted into those ordinances. Hopefully that makes sense. So we walk through the chapter 15, and Moses continues giving more laws and ordinances that should be kept in the promised land. Then we saw in verse 32, we see the importance of the Sabbath. There was a man that was out gathering sticks on the Sabbath. The children of Israel found him. They inquired of Moses. They went back to Moses. Moses inquired of the father how to handle it. The father told them to stone him, and that's what he did, because he didn't keep the Sabbath. Sabbath is one of those things that we should be keeping. And so Sabbath is one day set aside, the seventh day set aside for no work. All right. Yes, and so the chapter closes out with an interesting law that I did want us to look at a little bit closer. All right. And so some of the ordinances and laws that were given to Israel for specific reasons. So as you read the text, always try to identify what the reason was for the law. Don't just identify the law, and don't just say like, oh, I don't have to do that anymore. Try not to do that. Identify the reason that the law is there. All of these laws and ordinances and commands and statutes and judgments and all that the Father gave the children of Israel were for a reason. Okay. And so there's one here in Numbers 15, verse 37 through 41. Let's look at it. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel and bid them that they make fringes. So they were supposed to wear like tassels of sorts, fringes in the borders of their garments. So around like the bottom of their clothes or the ends of their clothes. So around here will be like tassels or fringes around the bottom. The garments throughout their generations, and that they put upon the fringe of the borders a ribbon of blue ribbon. And it shall be for unto you a fringe, that ye may look upon it and remember all the commandments of the Lord, and do them, that ye seek not after your own heart or your own eyes, after which ye used to go whoring. 40, that ye may remember and do all my commandments, and be holy unto your God. I, the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord your God. And so there are some belief systems today that teach that require that there's a requirement to wear tassels or these fringes. They're called tzitzits. I don't know if you've seen that, tzit or tzitzit. So there are like Messianic Hebrews that wear these, I believe. Don't quote me on that if I'm wrong. Also know that the Hebrew Israelites, some of them wear tassels and fringes and whatnot. But the reason here, and a lot of times people say like, oh, I have to wear tassels, or we have to wear tassels. Well, let's look here a little closer at the text. Okay, so the text says that there's a reason for the fringes. The fringes were there so that they could be looked upon, and that you could remember the commandments of the Lord and do them. So the children of Israel were forgetting the commandments. They needed a constant reminder of the instructions that the Father had given them. They needed a constant reminder that they were set apart, that they were different, et cetera, et cetera. And so the requirement of wearing tassels isn't there anymore, because we find our reminder in the blood of Yahushua now. We don't find our reminder for the commandments or keeping these things, or looking after our own eyes and our lust and different things like that, or going after false gods. We don't find those reminders anymore in these physical tzitzits that we see on our clothing, or that we see on our own like shawls or anything. No, we find our reminder in the finished work of the Mashiach on the cross. All right. And so I want to kind of, hopefully does that help like kind of put it together? Because sometimes like, you're going to get in discussions and people are going to say, well, you don't believe the Bible because you don't wear tassels. And it's like, well, let's pull it up. Let's look at it. I just want to kind of pull it out so that I felt led to pull it out so that we can understand how to engage in the conversations that we're having with different belief systems out there. And so, yeah, if you need this physical remembrance of tassels to remember the commandments and instructions of the Father, then go right ahead. Go at it. That's the reason that they had it. That's the reason that he told them, because they needed that physical reminder. And if you don't need that physical reminder, if you are always looking ahead and keeping the blood of Yahusha that's covering you at the forefront of your mind, and that's what motivates you and keeps you on the straight and narrow, then cool. It's the same thing as ZZs, essentially. Hopefully that makes sense. So that was for their remembrance. And so whatever you do for your remembrance, then you do that. Chapter 16. As we move into chapter 16, we're going to look at the story of Korah. All right. And so it's really a story of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. And so chapter 16 begins with Is everybody still with me? If I'm going a little fast, you can always watch it later and slow me down on YouTube. So chapter 16 starts with the book of Korah. I mean, not the book of Korah. Chapter 16 begins with Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. All right, so Korah, Dathan, and Abiram are leaders throughout the nation of Israel. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second, but they gather a contingency of about 250 leaders from across the nation of Israel, from across all the children of Israel, you can say all the tribes, but it was really just two tribes. But they gathered these leaders, all right? And so these leaders are gathered together to rise up in opposition to Moses and Aaron. So they are saying they don't want Moses and Aaron to be the leaders anymore. They want, somebody else to lead them. They want some more power and opportunity and all that type of stuff. And so it's a similar exchange to what we saw with Aaron and Miriam coming against Moses being the leader over in Numbers chapter 12 last week. And so let's start here in verse 1. Now Korah, the son of Izhar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi. So Korah is a Levite. And Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the son of Peleth, sons of Reuben. So there are descendants of the tribe of Reuben. Took men, and they rose up before Moses, and with certain of the children of Israel, 250 princes of the assembly, famous in the congregation, men of renown. So these are well-known people. And they gathered themselves together against Moses and against Aaron, and said unto them, Ye take too much upon you, saying all the congregation are holy. So they say all of us holy. We always got the Spirit. Let me stop. Every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Wherefore then lift ye yourselves up above the congregation of the Lord? ? So essentially what they're saying is here is like, so let me go back. So we see here that they raise up 250, they gather 250 princes of the assembly. I think the next details that the story gives us here are important about these princes. It said they were famous, they were well known in the congregation, and they were men of renown. This would be the same as saying today that these are well-known pastors. These are celebrity, or no, I won't say celebrity pastors. That seems too pointed. But these are, leaders in the Christian community. That's how we would say it today. But these leaders led them right to the pit. That's the story. It's not what I said. It's what the story says. I'm gonna show you because I want you to believe the Bible, not me. All right, so it said that these leaders were famous. They were all that type of stuff. So these were big wigs. These were big shots. All right. And as we get further down in the text, it appears that these leaders specifically desired more position, more power. They wanted more control over the people. They wanted more control of what was going on throughout the camps and different things. They didn't like that Moses and Aaron were the ones that the Father had chosen. Well, hear that. The leaders, the famous men, the men of renown, didn't like that the Father had chosen some other people to do work that they should rightfully have and the power that they should rightfully have. So let me stay off of that. Okay, so they tell Moses and Aaron, like, hey, all of us are holy now. Why should you be the leader? So Moses sees kind of what's going on here, and he tells them, like, hey, the Father, chill out, calm down. The Father will reveal who is holy and who isn't, and who he has chosen and who he hasn't. And so Korah, he's a Levite, so he's already dwelling in closer proximity to the children of Israel. And we talked about that last week, didn't we, about how they were living and how they were dwelling. Yeah, we like the southeast, the west, and all that. So their location. So Korah was dwelling closer to Moses than the sons of Reuben would have been. And so Korah's having a conversation with Moses, and he basically says, and Moses asks him a question. He says, "Is being a Levite not enough for you? You want to have the priesthood too?" Because the priesthood was given to Aaron and his descendants. The Levites, their responsibility was to serve. They were given as a gift to the Aaron lineage of priests. So they were given as a gift to the priests to help them fulfill the assignment. So their responsibilities was to like keep the temple and the sanctuary and the tabernacle, kind of do all of those things, make sure that everybody had what they needed for sacrifices and really support the priests. But ultimately, the priests had the responsibility for all these things happening the way that they should with God. Okay. And so Moses says to them, like, and Moses says to Korah, like, is that not enough for you all? You want to be a priest too. Being a Levite wasn't enough. And so then Moses calls these other rebellion leaders, Dathan and Abiram, and he says, "Hey, I want you to come here and speak with me." They was like, "We're not even coming to talk to you." Now check this out. Moses, think about this. Moses, who has led these people in the way that he has, calls for two of these. Let's just say, I don't want to say levels, like it's levels to this, but it is. He calls like these two lower level leaders, like, "Hey, I need y'all to come holler at me for a second. I need y'all to chop it up with me." And so they like, "No, we ain't even come. We won't fool with you like that." What? That is wild that was the conversation that they were even comfortable with having. All right. So anyway, they said they're not coming to talk to Moses. And they said, this is what they said. I'm gonna paraphrase it, but you can find it in the text. They say this. They said they wouldn't even come meet with Moses. They said to him that you brought us out of a land, you brought us out of a land flowing with milk and honey. They talking about Egypt. They forgot again that it came with chains and whips and beatings and slavery. So they said you brought us out of a land flowing with milk and honey, and you still ain't brought us into this new place that you promised us that with milk and honey, and you ain't even gave us no inheritance yet. So we ain't coming to talk to you because you ain't leading right. Okay. Ultimately, the father is upset by all this. He wants to kill the people, but Moses and Aaron ask him not to. Verse 22 says this, and they fell upon their faces and said, "O God, the God of the spirits of all flesh, shall one man sin, and wilt thou be wrought with all the congregation?" So they saying, "Hey, it's just a few knuckleheads. Are you really going to kill everybody because of what these few knuckleheads is doing?" And so again, the father's like, "Okay, I'm not going to kill everybody because you just keep begging me not to." So instead, he tells Moses to go to the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Tell everybody who live by them. So if you live in a subdivision, I live in like a little circle situation. So if you live in a subdivision, he basically said all your neighbors like, "Hey, everybody in the circle need to leave except for that house right there. Everybody in the circle need to go. They just need don't even say nothing to them, get out your house, whatever, go away." So he goes and tells all the people, "Get away from their house and don't touch none of their stuff on the way out unless you want to be consumed in their sins." So the people leave and they stood back and they watch and they kind of see what's going on. We're going to pick up the text here in verse 28. All right. I'm excited. Are you guys enjoying this as much as me? And Moses said, "Hereby ye shall know that the Lord has sent me to do all these works, for I have not done them of my own mind. If these men die the common death of men, or if they be visited after the visitation of all men, then the Lord have not sent me." So Moses like, "Hey, if they just die like, in old age or whatever like that, then that means that the Father didn't send him." But verse 30, "If the Lord make a new thing and the earth open her mouth and swallow them up with all that appertains, or all those that follow them, or all those that are connected to them, and they go down quick into the pit, then into the pit, don't forget that, then ye shall understand that these men have provoked the Lord. And it came to pass, as he made an end of speaking all these words, that the ground clave asunder that was under them." That means the ground opened up. And the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them up, and their houses, and all the men that appertained were connected to them, followed them, unto Korah and all their goods. Then all they that appertained to them went down alive into the pit, and the earth closed upon them, and they perished from among the congregation. Verse 34. And all Israel that were round about them fled at the cry of them, for they said, "Lest the earth swallow us up also." That's hilarious to me. I don't know why. "And there came also a fire from the Lord and consumed the 250 men that offered incense." All right. So we see here that the Father showed them that Moses had been sent by him to lead the people. And so this passage, as I read through it, always highlights a certain truth for me that I see continue throughout the entirety of the Bible. I've kind of been talking about it a little bit tonight, so I'm not going to stay here, but it matters who you are connected to, and it matters who you follow. There are some schools of thought out here now, which I obviously disagree with, but there's some schools of thought out here that you don't have to agree with everything that you don't have to agree with everything the pastor say. You ain't got to agree with everything that the leaders say and all this type of stuff. Me myself personally, I think that's foolishness because what if they didn't agree with what Korah, Dathan, and Abiram said this one time? It said that everybody connected to them, everybody that followed them, their wives, their sons, their descendants, all of them died because of decisions that Korah, Dathan, and Abiram made. So because they were connected to Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, whether they agreed with what they did or not, they all died. They all went down to a pit alive. So I think it matters a little bit, at least, like who you connected to. You know what I mean? Like the earth opened up, like there was a sinkhole. It's like it was a big old hole, and they just vanished. So another thing, if you're not gonna make decisions for yourself, make decisions for your bloodline. Don't be Korah. Don't be Korah and them. Don't be Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, who kids died just because they wanted some power. It's because they wanted a position that God never gave them. Like, let's stay in our own lane. Let's be comfortable with that. There are people, they say stuff about me. They like, oh, you're a pastor. No, I'm not. I'm not a pastor. I don't want to be a pastor. I'm gonna be honest. I don't think that's my gifting because I'm not gonna say it out loud, but that's just not my thing, you know. Like sometimes people be people in it. I don't be people in it like that. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, so let's keep going. And so the end here is that those who opposed the Father's chosen were killed. And it was also reaffirmed in verse 40 that only the seed of Aaron were to offer incense before the Father. So all these 250 other leaders who tried to say we want to be a part of the priesthood, all those people died because they tried to offer incense. They tried to offer fire or strange incense into the Father, but the Father had already set and chosen Aaron to be the only one to offer incense, the priest, the high priest, to be the only one to offer incense before him. All right. And so after this, as we end out, as the chapter ends in verse chapter 16, what we see is that the children of Israel are once again complaining and murmuring, like they just seen what happened to Korah, Dathan, Abiram, and all these 250 leaders. They just saw that, and they are still complaining and murmuring. This time, they accuse Moses and Aaron of killing those people. They said, you killed the Lord's people. Like they're accusing them of doing that. So long story short, the Father came down, his presence came down, and he desired to consume the people again. But Moses and Aaron again prayed and asked and were interceding for the people, asking him not to do that. This time judgment fell on them. Their consequences came on them in the form of a plague. And so the plague killed about 14,000 people, 14,700 to be exact, per the text. It killed 14,700 people before Aaron was able to intercede and stop the plague. And so we see that almost 15,000 people died because they complained about Moses and Aaron again. They are just not getting the picture. I don't know what's going on with that. All right. So as we move into chapter 17, what we see here is that the Father is reaffirming his chosen, who his chosen people are. And so in chapter 17, we see the Father giving Moses divine instructions for how he will affirm to the nation that he's chosen Aaron. And so how he did this was that every tribe, and I'm just going to summarize because this is a short chapter, but how he did this was that he every tribe, they took a stick or a branch, or it says rod, but some type of wood stick. Every tribe took a stick and they wrote the names of all the men on those sticks of the tribe, of that tribe. So Aaron's name was written, he told Moses to include the name of Aaron on the stick of Levi, the tribe of Levi, include Aaron's name on it. And so ultimately, they were going to put all these sticks before the Father, and the Father would supernaturally cause the stick to bloom that of the tribe of the man that he had chosen. Excuse me. So this was all done so that all the complaining and all the murmuring of the children of Israel would stop. So Moses follows the instructions. He gathers all these sticks. They got all the names on it. He brings all of them into the tabernacle before the Father's presence. And the next morning, when he had come into the tabernacle, or come into the presence of the Father, Aaron's stick had budded. So his stick had began to produce fruit or began to bud leaves, or I don't know what exactly did, but that's just how I see it in my mind. That his stick began to grow and have leaves and began to bear fruit. And then he told the Father told Moses to leave that budded stick, that rod with this fruit on it, in the testimony, in the place of testimony against all those who rebelled. All right. So that's how the Father divinely reaffirmed that he had chosen Aaron to be the leader as far as the priesthood for the children of Israel. And he's already shown Moses and reaffirmed him multiple times. I don't know why people still messing with Moses at this point, but they're rebellious people and they're in the wilderness and folks do wild things. As we get into chapter 18, the chapter begins with the Father speaking to Aaron and giving him instructions regarding the keeping of the tabernacle. So ultimately Aaron and his sons were to bear the iniquity of the sanctuary and the iniquity of the priesthood. And all the remaining Levites, all the remaining brethren, they were supposed to minister before the tabernacle. We've already talked about that. We're not going to spend a lot of time there. The scripture goes on to break down the responsibilities of who's supposed to do what and all this stuff. As we move towards the end of the chapter, we do see the introduction of the tithe here as it relates to the inheritance for the Levites. So we will read that. And as we know by now, the Levites did not receive an inheritance in the other land, in the promised land. So let me stop and talk about the Levites for a second. The Levites are interesting because I don't know if we've talked about this already, but if we did, we're just going to double down on it here. Something as part of teaching, when you're teaching, some things are like introducing and then some things are like reinforcing. So if I've already talked about it, it's just reinforcing, But the tribe of Levi, if we remember when Jacob set out to bless and kind of speak over his children at the end of his life, Levi did not receive a blessing. Levi actually received a curse because Levi and his brother, I forget the name off the top of my head, but is it Simeon? But they had killed all those men in relation to Dinah, because Dinah had been raped. And so they had killed all those men, and Jacob was always a little upset about that. So Levi didn't receive a blessing as part of that father blessing that we haven't spent a lot of time, but as part of that generational blessing and passing down, et cetera, et cetera. The interesting part here is that when Levi was chosen, so let's think about this. Even though Levi had been cursed by his father, essentially, and we know that at that time, what was spoken, even now, what's spoken over you begins to bear fruit in your life. Let's just say it like that. And so the children of Levi were able to become the chosen ones of the Father. Why? Because they stood up and they said that they were on the Lord's side when everyone was worshiping the golden calf. So when Moses and Joshua were up on the mount, Moses was up on the mount, Joshua was around the mount, I guess, just wait for him to come down. But when Moses was up on the mountain, the Father told him that, hey, the people are down there worshiping the golden calf. Moses comes down, and then Moses, he's mad and he grinds up the calf, and all that, all the gold, and makes him drink all that. And then he says, who's on the Lord's side? And so the tribe of Levi stands up and says that they are on the Lord's side. And so because they took that step and they chose to stand on the side of the Father, they were then set apart for the Father's service and to be his inheritance. Okay. And so I think that's an interesting connection I want to share with you guys. Hopefully that makes sense. And so now let's get back to here. And so we know now that the Levites did not receive an inheritance of the land in the promised land. So when they get into the promised land, they're going to break it down by tribes. Levi was not supposed to know the descendants of Levi were not going to get any land because they were the chosen of the Father. And so the Father provided for them. And so the tithe, at least biblically, the tithe was the way that the Father had instituted for the provision of the Levites, for the Levites to receive provision at the hands of their brothers who were receiving inheritance. All right. And so even the Levites were still required to give a tithe, a tenth, again unto the Father in the form of a heave offering. So let's read chapter 18, verses 20 through 28. And the Lord spake unto Aaron, thou shalt have no inheritance in their land, neither shalt thou have any part among them. I am thy part. So the father is saying, hey, I am your inheritance. I am thy part and thine inheritance among the children of Israel. And behold, I have given the children of Levi all the tenth in Israel for an inheritance. So this tenth wasn't for the father. This tenth was for the Levites. It's for them. All right. For their service which they serve, even the service of the tabernacle of the congregation, neither must the children of Israel henceforth come nigh the tabernacle of the congregation, lest they bear sin and die. But the Levites shall do the service of the tabernacle of the congregation. They shall bear their iniquity. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations. And among the children of Israel, they have no inheritance. For the tithes of the children of Israel, which they offer as a heave offering unto the Lord, I have given to the Levites to inherit. Therefore, I have said unto them, among the children of Israel, they shall have no inheritance. He says it again. The Lord spake unto Moses, saying, thus speak unto the Levites, and say unto them, when ye take of the children of Israel the tithes which I have given you from for your inheritance, then ye shall offer up a heave offering of it for the Lord, even a tenth part of the tithe. And this your heave offering shall be reckoned unto you as though it were the corn or the threshing floor and the fullness of the winepress. Thus ye shall offer a heave offering unto the Lord all your tithes, which ye receive of the children of Israel, and ye shall give thereof the Lord's heave offering to Aaron the priest. So this is how the tithe was designed to work in Numbers, in the book of Numbers, for the children of Israel as they were entering into the promised land. And the tithe was for the Levites to sustain them. So the tithe at that time wasn't necessarily like money or gold or all that stuff. It was food, because when it says inheritance of land, they were farming the land, they were ranching the land, raising cattle and livestock and all those things. And so the Levites didn't have land to do that, and so they received a tenth in the form of a tithe from their brethren, so that they could have the things that they needed as well, food and all those types of things. All right, let's move into chapter 19. Anybody got any questions? Let's move into chapter 19. Chapter 19 is pretty short here. We're just going to do a quick summary. We have the father here giving Moses and Aaron some instructions regarding purification. The beginning of the chapter speaks about the requirement of a red heifer sacrifice for the separation and purification of the children of Israel once they enter into the promised land. And then the chapter ends or transitions and speaks about the purification process for those that encounter and handle the bodies of the dead. Okay, so that's what's going on in the chapter 19, just some instructions about purification. I'm not going to talk a lot about the red heifer unless you guys want to talk about the red heifer, but let's keep going. Chapter 20. We're almost there, guys. Chapter 20. And so chapter 20 begins with the children of Israel entering into the desert of Zin and dwelling in the land or town or city, whatever you want to call it, of Kadesh, okay? In Kadesh. And so they have moved from the wilderness. They have moved from I just saw this today, and this is fascinating to me. They have moved from the wilderness into a desert. And so oftentimes I'm like, oh, we just go from wilderness to promised land. The children of Israel went from wilderness to desert, back to wilderness, I believe. But I mean, still, they went. It's fantastic, because a lot of times we're walking through this stuff and we're like, man, this wilderness looks like a desert. Well, look, you got like biblical example here that they went from a wilderness to a desert too. I know, right? You got to find yourself in the scriptures. All right. And so they moved from the wilderness into the desert. And so that now that they are in the desert, they're without water. They began to complain again. They're upset with Moses and Aaron. They said, hey, you should have just left them alone. They made them leave Egypt only to come to a place with no food, with nothing, with no water, no fruit, none of that stuff. So they all upset. Side note here, this is also where Miriam, Moses' sister, dies in Kadesh. She's buried there. And so Moses and Aaron enter into the Father's presence, and they're asking for instructions about bringing forth water and taking care of the people. Moses receives instructions from the Father, and the Father gives him these instructions. Now, these are similar to the instructions over in Exodus 17, I believe. Yes, I think it's Exodus 17. So these are similar to the instructions in Exodus 17, but they're not the same. It's not the same occurrence from my study, at least. If it is, tell me. All right, so these are the instructions. The Father tells Moses to take his rod, gather all the people, all the children of Israel, go to this rock, and then speak to the rock before the eyes of all the people, and water will come forth. I don't know why. You guys let me know why in the comments if you know. But Moses, he does some of what the Father says, similar to how we always do. Moses, he gets the rod, he gets the people, he goes in front of the rock, in front of all the people with them, their eyes looking at him, and then he hits the rock twice with his staff. Now, water comes out. Hear me clearly. Water comes out, but Moses didn't do what the Father said. And so a lot of times we take results as the Father's like what's it called? Like the Father validating what we've done. Results are not an indicator of your obedience or disobedience. Outcomes are not always an indicator of your obedience or your disobedience or your process. Sometimes outcomes happen just because the Father is good. And in this situation, outcomes had they got water because the people needed water, not because of what Moses did, because Moses was disobedient. All right. Let's look at verse 12. The Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, because ye believe me not to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel. So if if Moses had done what the Father had told him to do in the way that he had told him to do it, this shows us that he would have been sanctified in the eyes of the children of Israel. But because they didn't believe him and they didn't to sanctify him in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore ye shall not bring this congregation into the land which he had given them. And so because of their disobedience, now we see that neither Moses nor Aaron are allowed to enter into the promised land. The chapter goes on, and we see the children of we see Moses and the children of Israel trying to pass on or keep going in their journey towards the promised land, but they have to go through the land of Edom. And so Moses reached out to the king of Edom. Notice that there are already kings going on, but Moses reached out to the king of Edom, asking permission to travel through their land on their journey. So remember who Edom is, right? Because the Bible's telling one story. It's one complete story. I don't like story, because when I was growing up, my grandma would say, "Stop telling stories," but that meant lying. That meant that I was lying. So I don't know. I think I have a tainted view of the word story, because like when I was growing up, I couldn't tell a story because that was lying. So anyway, I don't know the better word right now, but these are just little insights about me. And so remember who Edom is, because the Bible is a collective book. It's telling one thing. It's telling one bit of history. And so Edom is Esau. The text tells us that. The scripture tells us that. And so Edom is Esau. And so here we have the descendants of Esau and the descendants of Jacob. Remember what the Bible tells us about Esau and Jacob. Let's put it all together. And so here the king of Edom, which is Esau, is saying no to the descendants of Jacob, of Israel, the children of Israel, and won't let them pass through the land. In fact, the king and the people of Edom actually come out to fight against the children of Israel. And so they just decide not to, basically, I'm paraphrasing him, summarizing, but they decide not to travel through the land of Edom, and they go a different way, and they move from Kadesh to Mount Hor. And as they enter into Mount Hor, now we see at the end of the chapter that the Father is essentially, his word is coming to pass, and Moses is instructed that Aaron is about to die. And he tells Aaron and the Father tells Moses to take Aaron and Eleazar, who is Aaron's son, up on the mountain in Mount Hor, and then in the sight of all the people, and then they would transition the priestly role through the exchanging of garments from Aaron to Eleazar. Eleazar becomes the high priest once the garments have changed or transitioned, and then Aaron dies on the top of the mount, and all the people see it. Let's move into chapter 21. We're getting close, guys. Hopefully everybody's still hanging on with me. You guys need a water break? That's fine. You just take one. All right. And so chapter 21, we see where the chapter begins with the children of Israel fighting against a king in Canaan. So a king Arad of Canaan, after he heard that Israel had sent out some spies his way. And so in verse 2, what we see in verse 2 is that the children of Israel then enter into a vow with the Father. They enter into a vow. This is important because vows were very serious then, and were similar to covenants. So when people entered into these things, like, they were expected to keep their word. So the children of Israel enter into this vow when they the king of Canaan is kind of coming against them, and they say, "Hey, Father, if you deliver the Canaanites into our hand, we'll destroy all their cities." The father agreed. He did their part. He did his part, delivered the Canaanites, and then they did their part, the children of Israel, and they destroyed all the cities of the Canaanites. And so in verse 4, what we see here is that the people continue their journey. And because they couldn't go through the land of Edom, and the Edomites wouldn't let them go that way, they were traveling, it says, along the way or by the way of the Red Sea, which I'm not exactly sure what that means, but in my mind, I'm like, they're traveling along, like if they had to go like straight through the land of Edom, they're kind of going around next to the path that the Red Sea travels. If I'm wrong, please let me know. And so the path that they were forced to travel, the text tells us that it discouraged the people. And so now the people are discouraged because they are walking all out the way. They don't like the path that they're on. And they began to speak against Moses. And now they're speaking against the Father as well. So let's take a look at this. We're going to start in verse 5, 21, verse 5 through 8. And the people spake against Moses and against, hold on, let me stop. And the people spake against God first and against Moses. Wherefore have ye brought us out of Egypt? Again, they want to go back to slavery. I mean, haven't we all been there? Whatever your bondage looks like. And so wherefore have ye brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no bread, neither is there any water, and their soul loatheth the blight bread. So they didn't like the manna. They were tired of the manna that he gave them. And the Lord sent fiery serpents among them, and they bit the people, and much people of Israel died. Therefore the people came to Moses and said, We have sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord and against thee. Pray unto the Lord that he take away the serpents from us. So Moses prayed for the people. And the Lord said unto Moses, To make thee a fiery serpent, set it upon a pole, and it shall come to pass that everyone that is bitten, when he looketh upon it, shall live. So Moses follows their father's instructions. He makes a serpent, and then all who were bitten of the fiery serpents that were sent out, if they looked upon the brass serpent, then they lived. And then the children of Israel began to move around a little bit in the next verses. So the question that I have here, and maybe someone can help me out with this, is why was Moses allowed to create like a bronze, like graven image almost, or in my mind, a graven image? Why was he allowed to create a graven image when like you aren't supposed to do that? Or maybe it wasn't a graven image. I don't know. If anybody has thought about that or has any insight on that, please let me know in the comments. It's something I asked the Father. I haven't gotten an answer yet, but I'm sure I'll get one at some point. All right. So the chapter ends with the children of Israel fighting, defeating, and then dwelling in the land of the Amorites, and then they end up also at the end of the chapter fighting, defeating, and possessing the land of the king of Og of Bashan. Chapter 22. So as we enter into chapter 22, we're going to be looking at Balak and Balaam. All right. So for those who know the story, we're looking at them, but I'm going to give us all an intro. So the chapter begins with the children of Israel. They pitched their tents and they're dwelling in the plains of Moab. All right. So the Moabites were not a part of God's chosen people. They're not a part of the children of Israel. And so they're dwelling in the plain of these. They're dwelling as strangers in this land of Moab on the Jericho side of the Jordan River. And so the king of Moab, who is Balak at the time, he basically sees that the children of Israel are dwelling near him. He doesn't like this, and so he sends out a group of leaders to a prophet named Balaam. The prophet is not an Israelite, but as far as I can tell from my study, that he was actually a prophet of God, even though he wasn't an Israelite. If I'm wrong there, please let me know. I did some studying as much as I could on that. But Balak sends for Balaam and wants Balaam to come and curse the children of Israel because Balak is afraid of the children of Israel because he had heard and seen about what they had done to the to the Amorites and also to the people of Bashan. So this goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of tonight. It's like Balak was afraid of them because of what the Father had done on their behalf and how the Father was fighting for them. And so the people were hearing about these things. They were hearing about these war conquests and they were hearing about them taking this land. And so Balak basically takes matters into his own hands, like, hey, these people are getting too close. He's afraid of them. And so he goes to this prophet. Um, so he sends the people to the messengers and to Balaam the prophet, asking him to curse the children of Israel, because he said he knows that whoever Balaam curses will be cursed, and whoever Balaam blesses will be blessed. So Balaam then goes and seeks the father, and the father tells him not to go with the people of Israel and not to go with the people that Balak has sent, and don't curse the Israelites because they are blessed. So Balaam refuses to go. The messengers go back to the king, Balak, and they say, hey, he ain't come with us. And Balak basically like, I'm gonna send some new people. So he sends a bigger group of leaders. And the text also says he sent more honorable leaders than the last bunch. And so they basically say the same thing, like, hey, Balak wants you to come and do this whoop de whoop and curse the people and all that. And this time it says that Balak has also promised to give you, Balaam, an honorable position in his kingdom. So it seems to be it's like this trying to play on the power piece here. And like, hey, if you come, he'll give you some power in his kingdom. So Balaam, again, I don't know why, because I would just be like, I told you I know last time, but that's just me. Balaam inquires again of the father, and this time the father tells him to go with the people. And so we're going to pick this story up here. Well, we're going to pick this passage up here in verse 17. All right, chapter 22, verses 17 through 22. And so this is Balak speaking initially. For I will promote thee unto a very great honor, and I will do whatsoever thou sayest unto me. Come therefore, I pray thee, and curse me this people. Balaam answered and said unto the servants of Balak, if Balak would give me his house full of gold and silver, I cannot go beyond the word of the Lord, my God, to do less or more. So, but Balaam is basically saying, like, hey, I don't care what Balak told y'all he's going to give me. I'm not going to go against what the Father says. I'll come, but I'm going to say, or if I do come, I'm going to say whatever the Father tells me to say. Verse 19. Now, therefore, I pray you, tarry ye also here this night, that I may go with what the Lord, I may know what the Lord will say unto me more. And God came unto Balaam at night and said unto him, if the men come to call thee, rise up and go with them. But yet the word which I say unto thee, that shalt thou do. Balaam rose up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the princes of Moab. And God's anger was kindled against because he went. And the angel of the Lord stood in the way for an adversary against him. Now he was riding upon his donkey, and two servants were with him. So I just couldn't understand why God told him to go, and then God was angry that he went. As I studied this out, and as I look deeper down into the passage, what was kind of becomes apparent is that it was Balaam's heart posture, I believe, that upset the father, because the father always knows what's actually going on. And so here, while it seems that Balaam was kind of innocent in the sense, the fact, in my opinion, the fact of him asking a second time means that what Balak presented to him as an offer was something that he desired to even consider. Even though he had already had this conversation with the father, and the father had given him these instructions and told him, hey, don't go with these people and don't curse these other folks. But we see here that Balaam is still like, wait, let me go ask again. So my belief through study, my position is that Balaam desired either the position or the notoriety or the honor that Balak was offering him. He desired that because and that's why he went back to father in front of the face of the father. So I personally believe that's why the father's anger was kindled against him. If you know why for sure, please let me know. I'm not sure. I don't know if the text gives us somewhere an exact answer. And so now he was on his way. He was on his way to meet Balak. Balaam is, and so Balaam is on this donkey. And so the donkey sees this angel of the Lord that verse 22 talks about. The donkey sees the angel in front of him, in front of, I think the donkey is actually a girl, sees the angel in front of him in front of her a few different places where she's going. And the angel has a sword to kill Balaam. And so essentially the donkey preserves Balaam's life like three times because Balaam couldn't see this angel. Only the donkey could see the angel and see the danger that the donkey, see the danger that Balaam was in from the angel. And so basically Balaam gets upset because the donkey's not doing what he wants her to do. And then he beats her. He beats the donkey, and then they have a conversation. So the father allows the donkey to speak to Balaam, and Balaam is speaking to this donkey, which I'll be kind of freaked out, but they're having a full-blown conversation. And then his eye, as they're having this conversation, or right shortly thereafter, his eyes are open and he sees the angel, and the angel of the Lord, and then him and the angel of the Lord have a conversation, and he repents, and the angel gives him further instructions. And we see those instructions here in verse 35. So let's read there. And the angel of the Lord said unto Balaam, go with the men, but only the word that I shall speak unto thee, that shalt thou speak. So Balaam went with the princes of Balak, and when Balak heard that Balaam was come, he went out to meet him unto a city of Moab, which is the border of Arnon, which is in the utmost coast. And Balak said unto Balaam, did I not earnestly send unto thee to call thee? Wherefore camest thou not unto me? Am I not able to promote thee to honor? So something about this honor thing, that, and this promotion, that Balaam wanted, or Balak knew that maybe he wanted or something. And Balaam said unto Balak, lo, I am come unto thee. Have I now any power at all to say anything? The word that God putteth in my mouth, that shall I speak. And so this chapter ends with Balak taking Balaam up to the high places of Baal. And so the high places of Baal, let me make this kind of in today's term. The high places of Baal would be, or high places in that part, would be essentially the equivalent of saying that he took him up to the meeting places of Baal. So just like the Father met with them at the tabernacle, there were places where Baal, they believed that Baal, the false little g god, Baal met with them. It'd be like, okay, it'd be like a church for Baal, basically, or a tabernacle of Baal, or a worship place for Baal. So that's what it meant by saying, like, hey, he took them up to the high places of Baal. And so as we move into chapter 23, the story of Balak and Balaam continues in 23 and 24. But in 23, we see that twice, so two additional times, he took him to one place of Baal in the end of chapter 22. We just looked at chapter 23. Balak takes Balaam to two additional places. And in each one of these places, each one of these locations, he wants him to inquire of the Father. And so each time Balak builds 7 altars and sacrifices upon those altars. So I don't know who told him to build the altars. It's interesting to me. I wonder if it's like a counterfeit kind of process of the devil, of the enemy. We talked about counterfeits, I think that was last week. So anyway, I'm not gonna get too deep into that because we're getting close to time. But he builds these 7 altars. Balak builds these 7 altars, and then Balaam, after he sacrifices, Balaam would go and listen for the Father. And ultimately, each time the words of the Father that come out of Balaam are that he blesses the children of Israel 3 times instead of cursing them. Balak is upset because he wanted them to be cursed, and Balaam was adamant that he would only say what the Father spoke. And so we see in verse 19 that he goes on to further double down on what the Father has spoken. And we quote this a lot, but I wonder if people know the context as they quote this. So let's look at verse 19. And God is not a man that he should lie, neither the Son of Man that he should repent. Hath he said, and shall he not do it? Or hath he spoken, and shall he not make it good? Behold, I have received commandment to bless, and he hath blessed, and I cannot reverse it. He hath not beheld iniquity in Jacob. So listen to this. In all that the children of Israel had done, listen to what he said. He said, he hath not beheld iniquity in Jacob. Isn't that beautiful? Neither hath he seen perverseness in Israel. Man, these were wicked, perverse people. And it says that the Father didn't even see that. The Lord his God is with him, and the shout of a king is among them. God brought them out of Egypt. He had, as it were, the strength of a unicorn. Surely there is no enchantment against Jacob, neither is there any divination against Israel. According to the time it shall be said of Jacob and Israel, what hath God wrought? Behold, the people shall rise up as a great lion and lift up himself as a young lion. He shall not lie down until he eat of the prey and drink the blood of the slain. And so the chapter ends with Balak asking Balaam, say, hey, if you won't curse the people, like at least just don't bless them either. But we move into chapter 24. This is the final chapter for tonight. We're moving in chapter 24, and the chapter begins with Balaam finally having a change of heart. I don't know what took so long, but hey, he's had a change of heart. And he said, hey, the text says he left off seeking for enchantments. So he's basically like, I'm not even going to talk to the Father anymore. I ain't got nothing to do with this. And so let's read that because I want you to see it for yourself. So Numbers chapter 24, verses 1 and 2. And when Balaam saw that it displeased the Lord to bless Israel, when Balaam, my bad, let me say that again. And when Balaam saw that it pleased the Lord to bless Israel, He went not as at other times to seek for enchantments, but he set his face toward the wilderness. And Balaam lifted up his eyes, and he saw Israel abiding in his tents according to their tribes. And the Spirit of God came upon him. So now what we have is Balak is upset with Balaam, and Balaam basically it enters in here, and we see here that Balaam's like, hey man, God's gonna bless these people, so I'm not even worried about that no more. It says he turns and he sees the children of Israel, and he's the Spirit of God comes upon him, and he begins to prophesy and bless the children of Israel again. And so Balak is upset with this. He's upset because he has done it again. And he called, basically, he's like, I called you out here to curse these people, and you come over here and you bless them 3 times over. You bless them so many more times. And he tells him, like, I need you to leave. I need you to get out of here. And so in before I get there, though, it says that Balak reiterates, not it says, my notes say this, Balaam reiterates that he will only speak the words of the Father. And Balak again dangles opportunity and position and status in his face. He then blames him not receiving that opportunity on the Father and tells him to leave. All right, let's look at verse 11, and then I'm going to say something. Therefore now flee thou to thy place. So he's telling him to leave. I thought to promote thee unto great honor, but lo, the Lord hath kept thee back from honor. This is often what the world will tell you. And this is often what we end up telling ourselves too, because we have so much of the world in us. The world will say that it's the Father's fault that you didn't get what you were supposed to get because you were obedient to him. And to me, that sounds a lot like the lie from the garden. The world will say, or those people who you don't end up doing what they want you to do, or you don't fall into their divination, or you don't fall into their trap, or you don't, listen to them, or you don't follow their instructions, or whatever it is, they will rise up with this kind of spirit of Balak, and they will say, I was going to give you this. I was going to give you this money. But you didn't do what I asked. So the Father, actually, because you want to be obedient to the Father, kept you from this. I was going to give you this position. I was going to give you this opportunity. I was going to open this door for you. But because you wanted to be obedient, or because you wanted to do it that way, which they felt was the wrong way, even though it's what the Father told you, because you want to do it that way, I'm not going to give you this thing anymore. And they would dangle these things in front of us like carrots. Listen to me. We cannot desire what someone else has for us more than what the Father has for us. We cannot and should not desire what someone else has for us that we can see over what the Father has for us. And if we stay with that posture, it'll keep us out of a lot of situations. Because people are going to open doors for you that lead straight to the pit. They're going to open doors for us to walk us right out of the promises of the Father. And we have to be willing. I'm not going to say be like Balaam, because, he did some interesting stuff. But we have to be willing to stand and say, no, I'm going to do what the Father told me, regardless of if you like it, regardless of if it falls apart, regardless of if I'm not over, I don't handle the outputs, regardless of what the outcomes are. I'm going to do what the Father told me. And I don't know. It just stood out to me how he dangled this thing in front of him and then made it the Father's fault that he wasn't getting honored. It's not the fault. No. It doesn't matter. Your obedience will always bring you honor. Now it might not look like honor to you, but your obedience to the Father is what he's looking for. David was a man after his own heart. David was obedient in the relationship that he had with the Father. He wasn't perfect. He's not looking for perfection. He's looking for willingness, obedience. Let me get off that. All right. So let's move down to verse 17. We see this. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. Oh, wait. Let me go back up. So he's basically like, we saw, he was like, hey, now flee to your place. But before he leaves, Balaam again, Spirit comes on, he starts prophesying. And he tells people, he tells them what shall come upon them in the latter days. This is interesting to remember. So when are the latter days? I'll let you figure that one out. And he even prophesies of the Messiah in this whole stretch here. All right, so verse 17. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob. A scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and destroy all the children of Sheph. And Edom shall be a possession. Seir also shall be a possession for his enemies, and Israel shall do valiantly. Out of Jacob shall come he that shall have dominion and shall destroy him that remaineth of the city. And so once Balaam is done prophesying, he leaves. Verse 25 confirms that, says Balaam rose up, went and returned to his place, and Balak went also his way. All right. Whew. So I know that was a lot tonight, but what did the Messiah Mashiach say on the cross? Like, it is finished. That's all I got for us tonight. So yes, as we finish up as we finish up tonight, the thing that really stands out to me is this: let's guard what we speak about ourselves. Let's guard the transitions and the opportunities that the Father is giving us in moving into new seasons. Let's really guard that. And then, as we saw here, let's not, and with Balak and Balaam, like, let's be intentional in not desiring things that ultimately will get us hemmed up. We can't want what someone, whether it be money, we can't want money. It doesn't matter what your season looks like. You can't want that money more than the Father's process for you. Because if you want the money or the relationships or the friends or the opportunities or the stage, if you want the mic, more than the opportunities, no, more than the process that the Father has for you, you'll miss the process. People are going to walk you right out of your process. And you'll look up one day and you won't have the Father. I personally believe that's why we see what we're seeing in the churches and in the leader ministry spaces that we have now, with people falling in different things. It's because I personally believe sometimes we skirt the process. And I'm having that conversation with myself very often. All right, so that's all I got for us tonight. You guys got any questions for me? Any thoughts? Next week we'll finish up numbers. So I believe it's 25 through 36. Let me confirm that. So yeah, next week we'll finish up numbers 25 through 36. If you have any questions, please throw them in the chat really quickly. I'm gonna pray for us, and then I'll answer the questions once I pray, and then we'll close us out. So, Father, thank you for this opportunity again to hear your word, to hear your heart for your people. I ask that you would set your people ablaze, your hearts of your people ablaze for you. Set the spirits of your people ablaze for you, Father. I pray that as they go out, I pray that they will be charged and energized and just knowledgeable more and more about you tonight, because of the word that you've spoken to them. I pray, Father, that you would set us all apart, that you would give us strength to walk this path with you and to walk the path of obedience, and that you would give us strength, as I like to say, to stay out of the boat. I pray, Father, this week that you would show yourself to your people in a way that they never imagined, in a way that only you can, in the prayers and the thoughts and the concerns that they haven't even communicated to anyone, Father, maybe not even communicated to you that you know. I pray that you would move mightily in those situations this week. And I pray, Father, that they would know that as you do, we would know that, like, man, the Father is actually with us, that he loves us, that he sees us, and that ultimately you're a Father who takes care of your children. And we saw that tonight, that you wouldn't completely destroy your chosen people in a moment of anger, because you didn't want to be a father. You didn't want to be known as a father who doesn't take care of his children. And I thank you so much for that. And even when you're hot with us, when you're hot with me, that you are a father who takes care of your children, and you don't consume me in the frustrations and the anger and the things that I've done against your commands and against your will. I pray that as your people go forth, Father, that you keep them and that you bless them. And just like last week when we looked at Numbers 6, 22 through 27, I pray, Father, that you would bless them and keep them, that you would make your face shine upon them, that you be gracious to them, that you would lift up your countenance upon them, you give them peace. And I pray, Father, that you will put your name on them as they are your children, and that you bless them. And I pray and ask these things in your Son, Yahushua's name. Amen. One thing I forget to put in here all the time is, if you have prayer requests, please leave them in the chat too, and I'll pray for them at the end. So yeah, thank you guys for that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed tonight. I don't see any questions coming through. Here's my Cash App if you feel led to give. Of course, there's never any pressure to do that. If you haven't given to the poor, please give to the poor before you give to me. And if you don't like people giving to the poor, then don't give to me because I'm going to go give to the poor. We'll be back. Like I said, I'm just trying to wait and see if there are any questions that come through. But we'll be back. Oh, I don't know if Brian is on here this week, but last week, Brian, you asked about altars. And I did do a quick study and I'll do a little bit more. But I don't see altars really mentioned a ton as they like the same way they were in the Old Testament and the New Testament, but they are mentioned in the book of Revelation. I don't want to say consistently, but a little more frequently than I would imagine. Yeah, that's all I got for you, Brian. Hopefully you're still around. If not, then you can always ask me next time. If you guys ever have any questions or want to get in touch with me, you can get in touch with me on my website. It's phillupgee.com. My email is at the top of there. My email is also in the description box below if you want to get in touch with me. And yeah, I don't see any questions coming through, so I'm gonna let you guys go. Listen, thank you guys so much. I love you. I love that you give me this opportunity, and I thank the Father, and I pray that I serve you all well. But more importantly than all of that, the Father loves you. The Father loves you. Listen, let him love you, okay? We'll be back next week at 8 p.m. Start before you're ready, and don't stop. I'll see you then.